Hello everybody, my name is Sabxander and today I'll be sharing some tips on how to optimize your time spent practicing The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker HD. I'll be going over how to improve your gameplay and overall mindset. I'll try my best to cover everything in a single video, so if I did miss anything, feel free to let me know in the comments. Now some quick things I'd like to mention before we start. This will be aimed at the any percent category for this game, since that's the most popular category as of right now. That doesn't mean that you can't use this video as a guide for other categories. I myself have been following this practice routine for the past few weeks and it's helped me out quite a bit. As a side note, I've put timestamps in the description of the video for those who'd like to skip ahead. And with that out of the way, let's get started. This first segment of the tutorial is optional, but it's very useful. So if you like to optimize your time spent practicing certain tricks, you should definitely implement this. One of the main things I recommend getting is Homebrew. I've linked a guide of how to install Homebrew to your Wii U in the description. Installing Homebrew is highly recommended for this game as it allows you to install an app named Trainer. The Trainer is essentially a program that makes practice easier. Using it, we can warp to different areas throughout the Great Sea and practice all sorts of tricks and glitches. Besides this program, it's also useful to have a data viewer. A data viewer gets data for Link's position, speed, angle, and a whole lot more. This makes learning angle precise tricks such as barrier skip and door clip easier to practice. Both of these programs are already a huge help when it comes to practicing, but there's one final program that will make practice a piece of cake. And that program is called the Save File Manager. With this, you can import and export any save file you want at any point in time. This skips having to play through the entire game each time you want to practice a certain segment. There is, however, an alternative to using Homebrew, that is adding new users to your console. Every individual user is given 3 save files and you're stuck with only those 3 unless you add a new user. The maximum amount of users per console is 12, which means that you can have an access of a total of 36 save files, which should be more than enough to practice everything. One unfortunate thing about the Wii U is that it does not allow you to copy data from any user to another, meaning that for every user you have to replay the entire game up until the section you like to practice, which is also why I recommend using the Save File Manager. It's a long and tedious process, but once it's finished you'll be good for the rest of your Wind Waker HD speedrunning career. Of course, if you have Homebrew, you'd be able to import all these save files, as I mentioned earlier, skipping the need to play through the game 12 times. Most people use Homebrew, though there are a handful of top runners that to this day still haven't bothered to get it. I myself have stopped using Homebrew for changing the language and importing save files, as I've already made great use of the Save File Manager and I can freely change the language for having a PAL console, which means an European console. And since I've also in the European version of the game, I can actually change to the language that is the fastest in the game, which is Italian. The second fastest language in the game is Spanish, but there's some differences between Italian and Spanish, in which some sections Italian is faster and it's way more convenient than Spanish. For example, it's the medley cycle in Dragon Roost Island, the outside room, where you have to throw a medley across the room that she can land on top of the structure. By having Spanish, it's a very tight cycle, but with Italian there's a lot of time, so there's an advantage to using Italian. Having an American console won't allow you to really change your language to Italian, it will only allow you to Spanish. However, if you have an European copy of the game and if you use Homebrew, you can actually change the region. Although it's region locked, you can actually change the region of your Wii U, so I can actually play in Italian. Again, I've linked the Homebrew installation process in the description. As I've said before, Homebrew isn't necessary, but highly recommended for anyone willing to take this game seriously. One more quick note about Homebrew. These apps will require you to fill your Wii U IP in order for them to work. To find your console's IP, you have to go down to the internet browser. Then continue to the main page and press the top right button called Settings. Scroll down and enable developer tools. After you've activated it, it'll show you your console's IP. Alright, now that we're done setting up, let's cover the second segment of the video, gameplay practice. This depends from person to person. Some people will learn faster than others, but this method seems to work for most people. Something that is very important to keep in mind is that repetition does not equal consistency. Whenever you're struggling with a trick, try to figure out what exactly you're doing wrong. Don't mindlessly attempt the trick over and over until you can get it once. Try to figure out what you're doing wrong Your speed might be off, you could have a bad angle, maybe you had the wrong frame. There's a lot of reasons for you to fail the trick. If you can't figure out after troubleshooting, go rewatch a tutorial, maybe watch a different tutorial and retry the trick. If it still fails, then asking questions in the official WWHD speedrunning Discord server can be a good idea. The server contains a lot of knowledgeable people who'd be more than willing to help you out. So feel free to ask for help whenever necessary, I myself included. I would still suggest trying to figure things out yourself before asking for help, since trial and error is usually more rewarding than asking for help. Besides troubleshooting tricks, moving into practice is a big factor. To practice this, I'll highly recommend using the aforementioned practice files. Many people assume that, since Wind Waker HD is mostly item slide based, then basic movements such as rolling doesn't matter as much, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Good basic movement is what sets apart the good from the best. A good place to practice general movement is DRC, Dragon's Cavern. Not only do you not have the grapple, but it makes use of every major basic movement in mechanic. You can usually tell how good a runner is by looking at their DRC gold. If at any point you get stuck during practice, being unable to make any progress yet you're somehow still losing multiple seconds over a record, you'd be better off comparing against someone for a segment just barely faster than yours. It's always recommended to watch multiple runners and not just world record, since different people use different strategies and their time save over yours tends to be more noticeable than world records. Now, moving on to the last segment of the video, mindset and physical safety. Mindset. Having a good mindset is one of the most important things when it comes to speedrunning. Many people don't consider this aspect of speedrunning when they first pick up a new speed game, but having a good mindset when running can be the deciding factor for a new PB. Another thing to keep in mind, and this is something that I struggle with myself, is staying positive and optimistic. It sounds relatively easy, but you'd be surprised at the sheer amount of people that quit running purely for those reasons. One way to get such a mindset is by setting small goals for yourself. Most people tend to have an end goal. That goal could be a certain minute barrier on the record, but for both cases it can feel like a grind to get that goal. When first starting out, saving a few minutes can be pretty easy, but once you reach a certain point, you'll get stuck, and this is where most people tend to quit. This is why setting smaller goals is so highly recommended. Trying to shave off 10 minutes off an optimized time to get a record is incredibly hard, while shaving off just 1 minute is much more viable and won't feel as daunting. One more thing regarding mentality. When using life split during a run, don't get discouraged by being behind splits. A lot of people tend to reset if they're behind during early game, and that's a really bad mindset to have. Every run will have mistakes, and the best way to improve is to finish runs. Finishing runs will get rid of a lot of nerves at the end of the run, and that will most likely give you much better consistency than any other runner that resets constantly. Resetting can also result in a mental block. You can get a mental block from pretty much anything, whether it be a certain trick or goal time. Mental blocks are extremely frustrating as they usually only happen to tricks you practice for hours. If you can't get rid of this mental block for whatever reason, taking a break might be a good idea, as it can refresh your mind. Regarding time loss. If you lost a lot of time and PBing has become impossible, a great way to keep the run going is to go for golds. Golds are basically the fastest time you've ever completed a certain segment. This makes it very fun to keep runs going, as you can go for the most ridiculous strats without any potential to throw the run. I also mentioned safety in this segment, and you probably know what I mean by that. It's keeping you safe from possible injuries that can happen while practicing tricks. Now there are two tricks that I know of that give a lot of trouble to people regarding hand injuries. One of them being the MSS, short for Manual Super Swim. MSS is a glitch that allows us to travel across the ocean without an item. When Link turns around in the water, he gains negative 3 units of speed. To keep that speed, we need to turn around 30 times per second. But because we're humans and we can't do that, we pause buffer it. Buffering 200 times frame perfectly while turning around each frame gives us enough speed to perform another glitch called the upcharge. This gives us the required speed to travel across the ocean. The problem with this trick is that you can end up injuring yourself, but don't worry. It's actually not that bad. Injuring yourself is possible with that technique, but it rarely ever happens. If you're already diagnosed with hand disorder, you can consider attempting this trick, though it's not recommended as it won't be very good for your hands. I'd recommend practicing in moderation and taking breaks if you feel any pain. Mr. Alberto23 has an in-depth tutorial on this. It goes pretty much over everything you need to know, so be sure to check it out. The second trick is pop it, get and skip. Now, this trick saves about 2 minutes if done correctly, but here's the issue. To perform this trick, you not only have to mash at a consistent speed of 13-14 times per second, but you also have to rely on RNG. This trick puts a lot of pressure on your hands and can result in wrist injuries. Luckily, this can be avoided with frequent breaks and a correct mashing technique. I myself have no experience with PG skip, so I apologize for any misinformation that I might have slipped in the script.
My fucking god, please, 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 please! Oh! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Oh god!
Alright, I believe that covers about everything. I'll say it again, but none of these things are absolutely necessary to be able to speedrun. This video mainly serves as a guide, so don't feel obligated to do any of this. I hope this video was able to help at least one person out there. If I missed anything, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Massive thanks to everyone that stuck around until the end of the video, and I hope to see you nerds again next time. Goodbye.